amazing digital circus is something you probably already know about if you clicked on this video, and I am a sucker for circus themes and jester designs. So with the finale coming out, I'm making Pomni.
What the is going on?
Hello, I'm Miss Twisted, you can call me Charlotte. I do crafting, cosplay, and other weird whimsical stuff, and I'm actually making two Pomnis, the OG and Evil Pomni. Why? Because I love a good obscure side character that gets a total 30 seconds of screen time. And I haven't seen a single other person cosplay this weirdo, so I'm gonna do it. Now, I'm a huge fan of contrasting themes like fire and water, dark and light. So, because I've got a good and evil, good Pomni is gonna be more like soft, lacy, glittery stuff going on, a little bit more girly, I guess. Basically right in my comfort zone, which is why I'm doing Evil Pomni first, because I expect that one to be more challenging. I really want to like push myself to try more like punky, zany, playful styles, I guess. I've got some fishnet fabric and metallic vinyls to play with, not to mention spikes and studs. Honestly, I just thought this stuff looked fun to play with and wanted an excuse to use it. Okay, let's get started with the pants. So we are going for the classic poofy pants, Tudor hose, pumpkin pants, bloomers, whatever you want to call them. And I've made these before for my previous jester costume. I think that I kept a bunch of the pattern pieces, but after I've moved, if they still exist in this house, I have no idea where they are. But that's actually fine because I like to do a thing I call feral crafting, which is basically just f around until it works. Where we're going, we don't need patterns. Actually though, I do recommend people use patterns most of the time. Like, just do as I say, not as I do. I'm a bad influence on you guys. Okay, quick stock take. For starters, we have got a stock standard non-stretch cotton fabric to use as my base. This is, I think, like quilting cotton. She's got some like stretchy vinyl going on, and I've got this sort of like fishnet stretch mesh stuff, which I think it'd be really cool just to add some extra texture in there somewhere. I'm hoping this takes well to dye, although come to think of it, I have no idea what this is made of. We should probably do a burn test. Fabrics are made of different types of fibers, and different fibers will take to dye differently, and I want to dye this fabric. So if it is a natural fabric like a cotton, then it's gonna dye a bit easier than if it's a polyester, and the easiest way to find out is by setting it on, by setting it on fire. Do not try this at home without a lot of safety stuff nearby and only a little tiny bit, because like burning plastics can be toxic. You don't want to set your house on fire. Look, I'm not your dad or your mum. Do things responsibly, all right? So that burned relatively quickly and easily, which is very much like a cotton. And if I squish this, okay, it does crumble away a little bit, which is very reminiscent of a cotton, whereas like polyesters and plastic stuff sort of forms a ball of plastic. The fact that there is some like hard plastic stuff going on here, but some of it does crumble away and it has the smell of burning paper, kind of tells me that like this might be a mix. So I don't know how it's gonna take to dye. So let's find out. Well, sadly, I left this soaking for a while, but even after it was washed and dried, all I got was kind of like this sort of very nice buttercream color, I guess, but not going to work for me. So I'm going to ditch that idea, which means we're going all in on trim and fleshy fabrics. Okay, I really was counting on that fishnet stuff for some cool texture, but since it won't take you any dye to get it the right color, I'm gonna have to put it aside and rely solely on the metallic vinyls and the studs and spikes for texture. But put a pin in this for now, folks. I'm gonna make a sort of lining layer for the shorts, and I'm guesstimating my shape and size, tracing an existing pair of my shorts. So two shapes roughly matching the same shape as an existing pair of shorts, and I'm going to sew up along these curved edges. These are going to form basically the crotch. So pulling these apart so that seam stays in the middle, I just have to join right here at the bottom where those legs are going to be. Okay, base shorts done. I've made these way too tall currently at the top because I always end up cutting them too short here. So I'm just giving myself a lot of room until I'm literally putting the hem on. There's also a lot of room going on here. That is because I can't make this any shorter without not being able to get it over my big old butt here. It's gonna get stuck as I pull them on. And the options are either putting them on like a fly at the front, which you don't want to do, or just like leave it loose and then it's going to get gathered up anyway because they're poofy pants, right? So now that I know this shape works, I'm going to cut out 2 more panels, one in red and one in yellow. Then I'm going to cut a bunch of splits on those panels and insert some extra little rectangles of like the opposite color. Does that make sense? Basically, I'm sewing some big thick strips of yellow into the red panel in those splits and vice versa for the yellow. But we've got to add some details before I sew my 2 wide short panels together. So we've got to go back to our stretchy metallic fabrics. This stuff would actually make a great base for the costume, but I didn't buy enough of it, and I kind of want to stick with my plain cottons because they are breathable, and I have not yet been to any conventions that had the aircon high enough for my liking. Instead, I want to use this as kind of like little strips, like stripes going up and down the pants. That is going to require some wrangling because this stuff is designed to be super stretchy and resist wrinkles and folds, so I'm going to try and make it do the exact opposite of that. Okay, with a bunch of strips cut ready to go, here's my plan. I have a bunch of just a relatively basic, cheap iron-on stabilizer. This is stuff that is basically a non-stretch, non-woven fabric that has a sort of glue on one side, so you can iron it onto a fabric to get it to basically stiffen it up. Now, my stretchy metallic fabric does not take well to an iron, so I'm using like an extra pressing cloth sort of thing over the top to make sure I don't accidentally burn or melt my fabric. But still needed hot enough to activate the glue on the iron-on stabilizer, so that definitely took some balance. Okay, the stabilizer is definitely helping me with folding this one, and I'm kind of using my tailor's clappers here to hold it in place while I'm sort of ironing this down in a straight line. There's still a lot of resistance in this fabric, but it's gone from an impossible task to a very difficult task, so you know what, I'll take it. As long as we go over it a couple of times with that heat and let it cool with the tailor's clappers on top, we can just about get this stuff into a lovely little ribbon. And then we just gotta do that like another 14 times to get enough stripes to cover these pants. A favorite little illegal sewing method I found, a great example of feral crafting, is putting a tiny bit of a quick dry adhesive on these strips and gluing them down, letting that glue dry fully because then I can essentially sew them in place without them sliding around or needing to pin them onto the fabric. I do not recommend this method for most people, like even with anti-glue needles, there's still a chance that the glue can gunk up your machine, and that is going to be an expensive fix. Anywho, with some funky stripes, I can sew my 2 wide pieces together the same as I did the base shorts. Okay, I may have made these slightly too large. This might be a bit too much going on, I don't know, but I'm going to gather them at the top of the bottom and sew them onto the base pants, and then I can decide if I've overdone it. Before I get too carried away with this project, now's probably a good time to mention that I'm gonna breeze over some stuff. Partly because I've made a jester costume before, so I'm gonna put the link to 2 videos down below of a previous jester build. If there's stuff you want to see, I guess, in more detail, go check those out. They're still not tutorials, they're more just watching me figure out stuff as I go, but maybe they'll be helpful. Okay, I'm gonna put my base shorts with the seam facing outwards inside my big shorts. I'm going to use some clips to hold together these pants at the crotch seam with those base shorts, and then just start like gathering up between these stripy bits so it can roughly match the width of those base shorts. Then I'm sewing a straight stitch all the way around, which hopefully is going to join the base shorts to the big shorts and hold all those gathers in place. This blue elastic is going to form the cuff around my pants, so I'm making sure I've got one just wide enough to go over my thighs, and then just sewing it together at one end to create a loop. Now, even with that gathering, the shorts are still a little bit wider than this leg cuff, so I'm going to be sort of pulling on the elastic as I sew it on with a zigzag stitch. It's still not exactly the correct way to do this. I mean, there's still going to be some raw edges inside the shorts here, but it should allow the elastic to retain some of its, well, elasticity. So those cuffs sit flush on my thighs while the rest of it balloons out above it. Now, I left one part open when I was sewing the base shorts to the wide shorts so that I can start stuffing stuffing into these pants. All of that filling now sits between the lining layer and the wide shorts, so it should be nice and comfy still. Final step to get these wearable, I need to chuck an elastic waistband on the top here. It's more of that same elastic that I'm pulling while I'm attaching with a zigzag stitch, and at least this top bit is folded over so there shouldn't be any raw edges inside. Now that elastic can help me stretch it over my butt to pull it on and sit nicely on my waist. Now for my fellow sewists out there, you might have forgiven me for leaving some raw edges inside those shorts. You might not forgive me for this next part. I accidentally used my good sewing scissors to cut some of these spikes. I don't know why I did this. I think I just was on autopilot and my monkey brain said, this stuff is trim. Trim is for fabric, therefore fabric scissors. Even though it is very clearly made of some sort of plastic, therefore not for sewing scissors. After giving myself a mini heart attack once I realized what was going on, I switched back to regular crafting scissors. And luckily, I don't think I managed to do any lasting damage to my good sewing scissors, but yeah, just a great example of pay attention when you're crafting, I guess. Anywho, these are getting glued down along some of those metallic strips, and I promise at some point later on, I'm going to use some tacking stitches by hand between some of those spikes just to secure it in place, because I don't expect this glue is going to last forever. Oh, you guys, I'm a big fan of these. These came out fantastic. Sadly, the blue spikes I only have as individuals, and I'm just gonna start gluing these in place. It's just gonna take me a lot longer. Okay, I've been gluing these blue ones on for all of 5 minutes. I'm already sick of it, and I've realized that I'm not gonna have anywhere near enough to cover everything. In case you're wondering, the reason I didn't get them in these strips, like the red comes in, is because they didn't have them in blue. Which I think is stupid, because like blue is one of the most basic colors. Why would you not make these in blue? Anyway, backup plan, I have ordered some of these red ones, but in silver, and I'm gonna see if I can just like spray paint a blue metallic over the top and then use that to stick all of the blue details on, because I'm not gonna spend like 3 days gluing tiny spikes onto things. I don't have the patience for that right now. Moving on to the top, and because I'm gonna have some big puffy sleeves and an underbust corset I'm gonna get to later, I fully intended to cut as many corners as I can with the top. Pun absolutely intended. And the main thing I'm gonna use to cheat my way into a well-fitted top is just a bunch of jersey fabric. So for that, I went to an op shop and just bought 3 t-shirts for $2 each. I'm doing both OG Pomni and Evil Pomni's top at the same time just because it's easier, and I'm basically just cutting out a rough back panel shape out of these t-shirts. These curvy little side panels and front panels I'm kind of doing mostly from memory from a pattern that I've used in the past. Because it is that stretchy cotton jersey fabric, it's going to allow me a lot of room for error if the fit is slightly off, because it's going to stretch to accommodate my body. Once again, I want to remind you guys, you'll probably find it easier to use a pattern. I've just been winging it for so long that I'm pretty good at just guesstimating these things. Now my front panel and side panel here have a very unusual curve at the side here. This is me trying to emulate a princess seam, which is essentially a seam that goes down the front of the bust to make everything quite form-fitted. As the name suggests, you see that shape a lot in like princess ball gowns and bodices, but my hope is it'll help disguise the fact that most of this is made of a t-shirt. Guys, I'm so sorry. This whole video is gonna have just the most awful lighting you guys have ever seen from me, because it's winter, it's raining all the time at the moment, so there's like very little natural light coming into here, and I just cannot be bothered trying to fix a bazillion points of lighting to improve it right now. Anywho, this is like my base top. I think it just needs to like come in a little bit right through the middle, which is perfect because I have a seam right here. So straight line to tighten this up, and I can attach the sleeves. Now my sleeves are going to mirror a lot of the same techniques that you saw with the shorts. For starters, I'm using an existing top that I know the sleeves fit me well to basically trace out a rough shape for a base sleeve. And I made a second set of sleeves that I've widened with a bunch of strips in between, same method with the shorts. Also forgot to mention this earlier with the shorts, but I am sort of opening up those sleeves with an iron just to make sure it's lying as flat and neat as possible before I start sewing on those strips. And just to give us all deja vu, I am sewing on those metallic strips, gathering between each of them until it is roughly the same width as my base piece I cut out earlier. All attached exactly the same way as I did the shorts, sewing it together along the top and bottom, leaving a little bit open on the sides so that I can shove some stuffing in later. The elastic's getting attached the same way, and once this is sewn into a loop for that sleeve, I'm going to shove it into my weird t-shirt top base to sew that sleeve in place. I mix this up so much, but I've got the sleeve facing outwards, the top inside out, so basically the right sides of both fabric are kind of facing each other. That way, when I sew these two pieces together, ignoring the fact that there's some raw edges in here, and I turn this whole thing inside out, the sleeve and the top should be facing the right way. Alright, you guys, I'm pretty happy with that. I've stuffed a little bit of stuffing in here. I'm trying not to make it look like comically oversized. But yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. Some of these bits are looking a little bit wobbly, but I have a plan for a sort of corset thing, so I'm not that worried about that. I'm trying to trust the process here because these are the ugliest colors together. I think it really does need the blue, otherwise it's very much giving Ronald McDonald.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Speaking of adding in the blue, for the color part, I was once again winging it as per usual, but the good thing about like those smaller flatter pieces is you can kind of like sketch them out on some scrap paper and just kind of place them on you until you're happy with what you've got. I did add an extra color piece on the side here. I thought it'd be kind of cool to have like 2 points, kind of reminiscent of like traditional jester colors where there's like lots of points around the neck, you know? Plus, it's just a good excuse to add more blue.
I'm using my basic non-stretch cotton for this one, 2 pieces of that shape sewn together along the edge. This collar's got some sharp little corners, so I'm gonna clip this corner as close as I can to that stitching. That is gonna help these corners stay nice and crisp when I turn them inside out and iron these nice and flat. A quick line of stitching along the edge will help keep this flat and it's ready to get attached to the top. Now I'm going to put a bit of glue with these and glue them in place while I'm wearing this top so I know I'm 100% happy with the placement. That way I can take it off and stitch them in place to reinforce it. The collar is staying open at the back so I can put the top on and off pretty easily, but this is a magnetic handbag clasp and I'm putting this in so I've got a way of keeping it closed while I'm wearing it. And you basically just poke some slits in here, push some of these metal bits through it, chuck the washer on, and like bend those metal parts closed around it. This is easier than like sewing on Velcro or putting in a snap stud. And I don't want to sound over dramatic, but I think that these magnetic clasps just became one of my favorite attachment points in all of cosplay and costuming. Okay, shorts are done, sleeves are done, top is done. I kind of want to do like an underbust corset or belt style thing to really snitch in the snatch? I think I was going between cinch and snatch. I want to bring in the waist, which I think will help exaggerate the puffy proportions of the sleeves and shorts too. Now I say corset, but I think the pattern that I'm going for is more of a stay, which is where it's kind of like more of a straight cone shape that cuts in above your hips rather than cupping over them.
And I haven't made one like this before, but I own a fantastic stay. This one is from the Dark Modiste. And what I like about this shape is that it folds out into basically like one flat piece because it doesn't have to cup over those hips. So I'm kind of thinking of like doing an underbust version where it's essentially like this same shape but kind of cut off here.
So while I'm wearing it, I'm going to mark with tape where I want that top line to be, so when it's off and I'm tracing it onto some fabric, I know exactly what shape to use. And I'm going to make this more like a boned corset than a traditional stay, which means that I've got a layer here which is couture, a very stiff non-stretch fabric, and a top layer of this metallic vinyl. Yes, I am going to wrestle with this stuff again. I've got my red and yellow halves sewn together, and I think I could get away without using stabilizer on this one, since that thick couture layer is going to take a lot of the force and strain, but I think it's going to help this fabric just behave a bit better. I'm going to put a fair bit of boning into this corset belty thing, so I'm marking that out on the couture with a pencil, just so I roughly know where I want those boning channels to be. Once again guys, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to explain every little detail about how to do corsets because I have gone through an entire video where I focused on corsets, so the link to that one is in the description below. A happy accident that I had a while back is discovering that this heavy duty bias tape that I bought in bulk is actually the perfect width for boning casing, which is basically like a really long pocket that you can thread boning into to hold it in place. I've sewn those strips onto the couture layer and sewn along the top of both of these pieces so I can turn the whole thing inside out. From here I am threading in those boning pieces bit by bit and cutting them shorter as we go. I've come to prefer the plastic boning like synthetic whalebone or even zip ties over metal boning just because it is so much easier to cut to length. I'm going to chuck some cheeky lines of stitching between the boning pieces just to join that top metallic layer to that couture layer. I didn't really have to do this step because the casing is holding that boning in place, but I kind of like the texture it gives.
Folks, the time has come to sing the praises of my second favorite cosplay tool of all time. All hail the grommet press. I love this thing so much. It can punch holes, you can do rivets, snap fasteners, grommets, eyelets. Actually, are grommets and eyelets the same thing? People who know sewing stuff, you have full permission to actually me in the comments.
Anywho, I don't know why, but there is something so satisfying about pressing in grommets. And that's saying something because the alternative to do this manually is banging things with a hammer, which I also am a big fan of. It's now a good time to tell you guys that yellow is actually my least favorite color. Like, I'm actually loving this. I think it looks fantastic, but I think I'm just getting used to seeing a lot of primary bright color yellow all at once. But I think once everything's on together, it's just gonna look very creaky and amazing, and the corset is looking fantastic. I did make it slightly too long because it's that stay kind of shape where it like hits over the hips and not like, well, over the hips, if that makes sense. Anywho, the top is like squishing my boobs and the bottom is like cutting in above my hips. So I think I just need to take off like a centimeter or two on the bottom and we should be good to go. I ended up taking about an inch off before I added this blue bias tape to seal it up. I hate hand stitching, so I was just trying to very carefully machine stitch and skipping over all the parts where the boning was so I didn't break my needle. I should have just hand stitched this one, I know. Alright folks, it is hat time. I have made a jester hat before. Did I keep any pattern pieces or references that last time? No, of course I didn't. That would be the sensible thing to do. But I have whipped this up. It is a mannequin head that I have put some cling wrap and some fragile tape onto, and then stuck some upholstery foam with some wadding to kind of make like the, oh my god, I've made so many jester hats before. I should know what these things are called. I think they're like tails or horns. Anyway, this is gonna get a duct tape pattern made of it, which is basically where you cover a thing in cling wrap, you cover that in duct tape, and then you cut off that duct tape in certain patterns, and that kind of gives you like a blueprint for what kind of shapes you need to cut out of fabric. Except instead of duct tape, I always use fragile tape. Why? Because many years ago, I ordered way too much fragile tape and have been trying to use it up in my projects ever since. And of course, I suggested in one video that you guys could gift me fragile tape at conventions if you see me, which you guys do, and I love that so much. So now I have like a lifetime supply of fragile tape. Except this time we are using German fragile tape, gifted to me obviously by a German follower who met me at Animork in Munich. So this is extra special, I guess. So it does say fragile, handled with care, but it also says nicht werfen. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm probably butchering that. Bruchgerthe. Oh, why did that come out slightly French sounding? I'm so sorry, I'm gonna quit while I'm behind. Okay, best thing about any symmetrical design, you only have to do one half. So now I can kind of like start drawing where the lines need to be on this thing, and then we're ready to go. Okay, actually, hang on, I need my reference image. I don't remember how her stripes go. So one of them kind of starts, there's like one that kind of goes up and behind. One of them kind of starts like here-ish and kind of goes up and onto like the top. Here. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this one counts as 5B. Am I missing one? Where's 1? 4, 5, 5B. How am I missing the first one that I cut out? Where did it go? It's a table. There's nowhere else for it to go. Oh, 5B is also 1. Okay, so that's my fault. That's fine. I have 5 pieces. That's pretty manageable. At this point, I'm starting to get a little low on fabric, so I'm just trying to be like careful and frugal with how much of this stuff I use. And because these are going to be the hat, I want these pieces to hold their shape. So I've actually got some iron-on wadding. So it works the same way as the stabilizer, except it's kind of like foamy and squishy, almost like gluing on a soft felt. With the foam on the backs, I started to trace out my pieces and realized a huge error that I almost made, or sort of half made. Okay, I'm not entirely sure if I can make this make sense, but the hat is made of alternating colors between red and yellow, right? And they're flipped. So if this piece here is red, this piece on the other side is gonna be yellow, and vice versa all the way through, right? So I can't have all of my pattern pieces laid out exactly as is in the one color, because this piece here might need to be red, but the piece afterwards needs to be yellow in that shape, and the other red piece I need is gonna be flipped. I don't know if that makes sense, but essentially, each piece as I go down the stripes needs to be flipped before it's traced onto that color. And this wouldn't have been an issue if I was using like a tailor's chalk or something sensible to trace my patterns. But no, I grabbed a freaking marker because I was overconfident that I had it right the first time. Luckily, I hadn't finished tracing all of these pieces, so I was able to like work around the areas that had pen on them and still get all the shapes I need. Except for like a couple of places where if you look closely at the hat, you can still see pen marks. And if you're standing close enough to me that you can see the marker lines on my hat, you're standing too close anyway. Even knowing what needed to happen, this was a bit of a doozy to get my head around, so I found it easy to just like try and go step by step with red and yellow at the same time so I can kind of like lay them out in front of me to make sense of it. And the pieces curve in different directions that you need to sew together along that edge line, so it's a bit of a doozy there too. I used some tearaway stabilizer here which helped a bunch to hold it in place as I sewed down and sort of moved those curves together. I've heard a lot of people complain that tearaway stabilizer is stupidly expensive, and honestly, fair. You can get away with like tissue paper or even regular paper sometimes. I still use it, but I am a cheapskate, so I will like pick up the pieces I've just torn off to put into the next layer until the pieces that have been torn off multiple times are now so small that you just can't use them anymore. Now, if I turn this finished horn inside out, you can see that wadding already means this is holding its shape without anything stuffed into it. I'm going to sew my two sides together down the middle and boom, we have the start of a hat. I'm still going to put some stuffing in here just for good measure and to make sure it stays upright on the mannequin. It creates a nice sturdy surface that I can start gluing the spikes to, which I definitely should have done after the rest of the hat was finished, but you know what? I was impatient. Getting some more deja vu, the hat is getting a band of blue elastic, much like the shorts and sleeves, which was tricky to navigate around some of these spiky areas. Again, why did I put the spikes on before I put the elastic on? That was just not a smart decision. But what was smart was remembering I have a ton of these little plastic Christmas baubles that come in halves so you can like fill them with stuff. But these make a really great lightweight base for the little baubles that hang off a hat. So the plan was to spray the insides of these with a metallic blue, so that way when you put them together, you've just got like a bunch of blue balls. Don't take that out of context. I gotta be honest, guys, I don't like it. I don't know exactly why. The colors just feel not quite right. It actually looks great in camera, but like in real life, these are a lot more dull. They kind of look like dull gemstones as opposed to like the bright poppy zany colors I'm going for. So I did a practice, which I now cannot see where I put it. There it is. Okay, practice bauble. Oh my god. I glued some fabric around this thing. It's literally just some leftover of that jersey fabric from the t-shirts that I can stretch over one side, cut off the excess, and then stretch over the other. All glued down with my trusty quick dry adhesive, of course. And that weird ugly line of raw fabric through the center, well, I can cover that one with spikes. And then just keep going with the spikes because I am happy to get carried away with these details.
Okay, wish me luck. I have a plan for how I'm going to attach the wig to the hat so that it's one piece that I can just wear instantly. Oh god, I look so bad with a bob. Never let me get this haircut. All right, right now we're definitely giving Edna from The Incredibles. I'm basically running some of my quick dry adhesive around the inside of the band of the hat, right away round to like the side of the ears, right over the ears.
After a few minutes to let that bit of glue dry, I took this off my head and ran it through the sewing machine to lock it in place. Now we'll come back to all of these pieces for final touches and reveals later on. For now, I can finally use this stretchy fabric for something that's actually supposed to be stretchy. I'm making some really basic arm warmers, which are basically just a tube of fabric sewn down along these lines with a little hole left for the thumb. I'm bringing back my good old tearaway stabilizer because you can kind of fold it over and sandwich the slinky stretchy fabric in between. That way it's nice and easy to sew along that line. And I still ended up starting again for this glove because I realized I kind of have to add that blue band before I sew the whole thing together in a tube. Anyway, with a red tube and a yellow tube, I'm doing the same thing with the shoes. Using the stretchy fabric, I mean, not making tubes, because shoes are a little bit more of a complex shape. It's another German fragile tape duct tape pattern. And because it's slinky stretchy fabric, I can get away with just 2 halves sewn together through the middle and basically making a sleeve that you can pull over that shoe. I'm still going to put a sneaky bit of glue right at the bottom here, which I'm hoping won't be very noticeable when I eventually want to take these covers off. Look, they were second-hand platform shoes, so I'm not too mad if I stain them. My silver spikes have arrived. They are looking lovely. I'm just hoping that spraying these with a metallic blue spray paint isn't gonna like destroy the finish, so let's find out. And guys, I was really excited for these because you might not have realized it, but I've actually done all the other major components for this outfit. It's just those last details. You guys know the drill by now. Everything blue is getting spikes on it. And I'm going to finish off the top and corset with some big blue balls. I'm not even sorry this time. If I describe them as big blue spiky balls, does that make it better or worse? That's the question.
So you guys know how Legos are famously very unpleasant to stand on. You know what's worse than Legos? These freaking things. As I was chopping these up and gluing them all over the costume, I kept thinking to myself, gee, these are going all over the floor. Better make sure I clean up before I start standing up and walking around. Did I remember that by the time I started standing up and walking around? No, of course I didn't. Take my word for it, socks are not going to save you from these bad boys. I'm not ever making that mistake again. One last thing I want to do for Evil Pomni. She's a lot paler and more gothy looking than regular Pomni, so I've got this stuff from Lumen's Workshop. And you guys know I will stand Lumen's Workshop any day, but this stuff is essentially like a thin stretch mesh. So it's really stretchy, a little bit see-through, and very, very strong. And the best part is you can print on this, so it's going to be great for like if you were doing a character with tattoos and different colored skin, stuff like that. I will put a link in the description below, but I'm not really using it for anything too complex this time round. I just kind of wanted to muck around and see what it was like to sew with. So I'm going to use it to make some like pale arm warmers and leg warmers to give her like really pale skin without me having to do like face paint over myself.
For gloves, I'm going the turkey hand method. I'm tracing my hand onto some stabilizer, which in this case is literally a piece of paper because I don't know where I put my stabilizer from earlier. 2 layers of mesh sandwiched between that paper, and I'm going to trace over my hand shape here with a stitch. My machine's got a stitch that's supposed to be good for stretch fabric, so that's what I'm using. Tear away that tearaway stabilizer, cut off the excess from the edges, and turn the whole thing inside out, and you've got a glove. To finish off my pale hands, I'm going to stick some masking tape over my nails, stick that glove on, and then super glue some nails onto those gloves. The masking tape should help protect my actual nails so I don't glue myself to the glove. And if I've done this well, I should be able to pull off this glove very carefully without having these stick to my hands.
And so, my darlings, we've got shoes, a corset, a funky shirt, some lovely puffy pants, some gloves, and of course, a magnificent jester hat with a built-in wig. But it is not reveal time yet because I have a whole other Pomni to make. Don't worry guys, it's not going to be another half an hour of me crafting. I'm just going to go over some of the things that were a little bit different for OG Pomni. Starting with giving her a circle skirt.
Now, I love circle skirts because they're basically just a donut of fabric. I'm using an existing skirt of mine to get an idea of length, but I'm essentially like folding some fabric into quarters along with my skirt and just kind of like cutting out that donut from there. And this top section, which is essentially the donut hole, that is going to form your waist. I'll chuck another link down in the description for Mood Fabrics, who does a great circle skirt calculator, but I'm going to make my life a little harder by cutting my circle skirt into quarters and essentially having 6 quarters, 3 red, 3 blue. That way, much like I did with the shorts, I can essentially make one really giant skirt by sewing those alternating pieces together. And guys, look at this, I even fully sealed in my edges here with a flat felt seam. Instead of red spikes, I've got some blue sequin trim, and I'm not usually a sequin kind of gal, but you know what, I feel like this is the right fit. Aside from the skirt, the rest was pretty much the same. I'm using some elastic to seal the edges, I've got a hat going on, I've got a nice puffy sleeve shirt, I used giant jingle bells instead of baubles, and a lacy collar instead of a spiky collar. You'll see more of the difference in the reveal, trust me.
Okay, last step with OG Pomni is attaching this to everything. It's basically just a big gold trim with a bunch of jingle bells on it. I used a ton of this on my previous jester costume and I absolutely loved it, even if the jingle bells did drive me a little bit crazy. So I thought that I ordered the same trim again, but it turns out this one is a lot bigger, more yellow, and has like a sort of gaudy holographic sequence through it as well. So it's a little bit less, I don't know, like subtle fantasy, and definitely a lot more zany and over the top. But considering this is a digital circus, I kind of don't mind that. If the jingle bells start to still drive me crazy, I can just cut straight through them because they're on like just really crappy little O-rings here.
I want this version of Pomni to feel just as extra as Evil Pomni, so absolutely everything is getting covered in the gaudiest trim, multiple layers where I can. I was worried I bought insane quantities of this, but I used up almost all of it just decorating this costume. I think my circle skirt alone took like 8 meters of trim. Okay folks, let's see if we can put this all together, hey? I got these contact lenses from Unique, so I'll put the link below, but I'm not going to wear them for daily use or to conventions because I can barely see out of them. This is why once I got one in, I decided to do the rest of my makeup before I put the other one in, just so I could see what I was doing. Alright guys, I think this is the Pomni done. Yeah, the skirt is ridiculously large and full, and I'm very happy about that. And also, I dyed some like pajama pants, so that I've got like short shorts under here. I don't have to worry about like flashing anyone. But I think that this is exactly what I was going for. I may end up regretting sewing this many bells on. It's definitely less noisy than my last jester costume, but we'll see if it drives me crazy anyway. So round 2. I think I've managed to hit Pomni, but much more edgy. I think she needs fangs, right? I've got some of those. Which do you guys prefer, without fangs or with fangs? They're definitely a little annoying to wear, especially to eat or drink, so I'm probably not going to bother wearing them to conventions, but they do look great just for a couple little happy snaps. The stretch mesh gloves really work for just like making everything look really pale. You can see I made some like stockings as well to go with it. Teamed that with the paler makeup, and this is definitely giving creepy clown. I did a photo shoot with Tay Bassi Photography and I'm so excited for these. Like, I think we really nailed some of the like theatrical but ethereal kind of things. Like, look at these shadows on the wall we're getting. We went a slightly different vibe for Evil Pomni. There's not exactly like a heap of lore or screen time, so we could kind of mess around with it. I wanted to go like a little bit unhinged, but not quite leaning into like full-on Joker, welcome to my twisted mind kind of territory. Well, I'm just so chuffed with how both of these came out. I hope you guys are as well. I know I'm going to get so much wear out of these. Thank you guys so much for watching. A huge extra special thank you to my ultimate supporters. These are my top people on Patreon. Artemis, Residual Images, Yuri, Robert Mischief, Mohican Creates, Mix Randvi, Morigu, Verilyn, and Michael. And of course, thank you to these other incredible Patreon supporters who are on screen now. Hey, you guys should come and join us over on Patreon too. I post previews, work in progress, and exclusive mini videos not seen anywhere else. Like this one where I made Fizzaroli's hat, or this one where I made these cool neon demons. I actually did a giveaway and a couple of lucky Patreon members actually got these horns. For some tiers, I even post out my own handwritten letters a few times a year. And of course, joining is the best way to support me so I can keep making ridiculous, ambitious projects like this. But if Patreon's not your jam, just by being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff that keep the YouTube robots happy, you are also supporting me. So thank you guys very, very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!